Welcome /malicious compliance. Prove I broke my arm? Sure. Bit of a warning for the queasy, descriptions gets a little graphic. The background is kinda long, but it's important to the story, to understand how ridiculous this nurse was being, and how clumsy I am. Background. Way back in the magical year of 2000, I was a teenager attending a summer camp. Usually, it was day only. Tons of outdoor activities, canoeing, hiking, swimming, archery, the works. I did not break my arm doing any of these. For the older 2 years of kids, they would host an overpass intense once a month. I was 13 and finally allowed to go and very excited. Got my tent, sleeping bag and friends. The night went as you would expect, when there's 20, 13-year-olds intense with the adults nearby. We tried to pull as many stupid stunts as we could get away with. I got dared to stand on a picnic table and dance. 13-year-olds aren't very creative. So I got up there and did. In the dark. While it was raining. I did not break my arm dancing on a wet table in near darkness. When we'd all had a good laugh, I went to step down, using the bench, and missed. My leg plunged down in the gap between the bench and the table. I went down and forward, hit the bench on my way, pivoted around it really fast, and landed on my outstretched hands. There was an audible snap. My left forearm, bearing my full weight and sudden deceleration, snapped in half. Didn't even break the skin. I remember rolling over, seeing my arm with suddenly 2 elbows, panicking, and pushing it back into place. Not perfectly, obviously. It was broken. But it was no longer at a 90-degree angle. That's when it started hurting. A lot. The ambulance took forever to get to us as they kept missing the turnoff for the campsite. I found out later they drove past it for most of that time. Eventually it arrives, I'm loaded in, and it's off to the hospital. When we finally arrive, it's been about an hour since I broke my arm. I've been in intense pain the whole time, and the EMTs hadn't given me anything for it. I don't remember why. The whole ride is very fuzzy. Here's where the malicious compliance comes in. I get brought into the main desk/stridge area. This hag of a woman with permanent resting bitch face starts asking me questions while the EMTs are standing by with me after telling her what they knew. It's a bit fuzzy, but the gist was this. Nurse, so, what happened? Me, I fell and broke my arm. It really hurts. The EMT said you could give me something while I wait. Nurse rolls eyes and makes a tut-tut noise. Nurse, we have to get your arm x-rayed first to make sure it's really broken. We can't give you anything until we are sure. Now go take a seat. Me, I'm sure. It broke in half. Nurse, smirking. Really? You broke it in half. Prove it. I swear, I get kids like you all the time looking for drugs. Now, I'm beyond pissed. I've been in agony for over an hour, and this woman is treating me like absolute garbage. Even if it were just a sprain, shouldn't that warrant some kind of pain management? I'm holding my arm, think for a second, and decide. Fuck it. As the EMTs are about to interject, I raise my left arm, grab the far end of my forearm with my right hand, and push. It bends. Very very far. Her face drains of all color, and she looks like she's going to be sick. She immediately gets on the phone. I'm now in 10 times the amount of pain, but I'm grinning as only a shit disturbing teen can. It took them less than 5 minutes to put me in a room, pump me full of morphine, set my arm in a temporary wrap. They then x-ray me and schedule the surgery. I had a plate and 5 screws put in, along with a full cast, that I kept on for about 6 weeks. They took the plate and pins out 6 months later. It was very painful and annoying, but other than an ugly scar, my arm is totally fine. Thinking back on it 20 years later, still worth it. TL, doctor broke my forearm in half, but still intact. Nurse didn't believe me, so I bent it 90 degrees in front of her. She believed me. Edit, a sentence. Remembering 20 years ago is hard. Edit 2, wow, I can't believe how this blew up. Thank you so much to the kind strangers who gave me my first silver and my first gold. X2. I've read through most of the comments and I'll try to answer some of the most common questions. Edit 3, formatting and a few minor corrections. First, here's a photo of the scar now. Here's a plate and screws they put and then took out. Q. How did you break your arm? To do that /90 degrees is impossible. A. Both bones in my forearm essentially shattered. They called it a green stick fracture. I don't know that it was exactly 90 degrees. Unfortunately I left my protractor in my other pants. But it did look like a second elbow. That was freaky enough. Q. What about nerve/circulation damage? A. I was really lucky. The doctor told me, after I came out of the surgery anesthetic, that it was a good thing I pushed it back when I first broke it. The position it was originally in was cutting off circulation and I probably would have lost the arm. That's what he told me, anyway. Q. How did you push your arm like that through all that pain? A. I was in so much pain I was quite literally delirious. It was a snap decision and really not smart, but I'm also proud of 13 years old me. He was badass. I don't think I could do that now. Q. The EMTs didn't do anything wrong, etc. A. No, they were really nice from what I remember. Q. Where was this? A. Southern Ontario, Canada. Q. Where were your parents? A. It was about 3 AM at this point. The camp had been trying to call my dad the whole time, but he slept through it for quite a while. One of the camp counselors rode with me in the ambulance. Apparently, he was more shaken up by the whole thing than I was. He didn't come back for a few weeks. My dad eventually picked up, rushed over immediately, and felt really bad. I was already under by this point, but I woke up to him in my room. He's a good dad. Q. This didn't happen. A. It did. Sorry if you don't believe me, but that's okay. When I was 14, one day I started having awful pains that felt like period cramps, but were much worse. I'd never experienced pain like this. Went to the nurse repeatedly begging to go home, and she refused, saying I'd just have to suck it up and take some ibuprofen and get over it. Near the end of the day I was crawling on the floor, holding my belly, to get to the nurse, to beg again for her to call my mother to come get me. Luckily that nurse had gone home for the day and a substitute was in, and she took one look at me and called my mother, who got my grandparents to take me to their house. When my dad came to pick me up, I stood up, walked towards him, and passed out cold. Turns out I had peritonitis and my appendix was dangerously close to rupturing. Imagine that. It wasn't period cramps. I was off school for a week in the hospital. Came back and the nurse saw me and said, all smug, see, I told you you'd be fine. You didn't die. Okay, so this is back in 1983, when I was the grand old age of 5. This tale gets better as it goes on, and explains why I hate going to see doctors and don't trust them. Fell off play equipment, leg going between the rungs, to climb it landing on the mat below in a heap. Teacher walks me to the first aid area, leg giving way with every step. Teacher drives me home, and gives me to my mother. Mum pushes me in an old pushchair to the doctors. She knows I have done something seriously wrong. GP decides I have ligament damage, and proceeds to push, pull and twist my leg. I just remember having my head buried in my mum's chest screaming. Granddad drives me to the hospital. We had no car, to be told it's broken just below the knee, and get a temp plaster put on. Go back the next day with dad borrowing granddad car, only for it to break down on the way home. Cranky 5-year-old in July in a hot car with a broken leg. Nice coach full of footballers pushed us out of traffic. Return 2 weeks later to the hospital to have the plaster replaced. I was too tall for kids' crutches, too short for adults, so they were putting me a plaster I could walk in. Nurse starts up the circular saw thing used to remove plaster casts. She gets a few inches down, and I start screaming, again, to be told it doesn't hurt, stop making a fuss. Plaster removed blood all over the place and a nice 2-inch scar, to prove that yes, I did feel the saw slicing through my skin. And people wonder why I won't go to the doctors. I had a snap clean through one of the bones of my wrist when I was about 9 to 10 from falling off the bottom level of one of them spider web climbing frames. I remember my mum acting really panicked while driving to R&D, but she kept saying along the lines of it's probably only sprained or bruised, but let's get it checked out anyway. Just reassuring me, only told me afterwards that she'd clearly heard the snap when I fell and was definitely not in a state to drive. Anyways, got to the hospital and found that they just don't believe you when you self-diagnose broken bones. They had me in a waiting room for ages. Finally got to a triage nurse who felt it a bit and gave me some paracetamol and scheduled an x-ray saying it could be broken, but probably just sprained. We'll take a look. Wait up to an hour more. Mum exaggerates and I don't remember too well and get into the x-ray. Here the technician is acting real short, sits me down on a chair to take an image of one angle, doesn't say anything, just suddenly twists my wrist to take an image at another angle. I remember being so close to passing out from the pain of that. Mum described me as instantly turning as white as the hospital walls. Bravo Opus. It's so weird that doctors and nurses have no good way of judging pain. It is so subjective. I had a minor car accident about 10 years ago, and afterwards I felt fine except for when I kneeled down on my right knee. It hurt a lot. I go to my family doctor, and he pushes around on my knee and looks really skeptical. I keep telling him it doesn't hurt when I sit there, or when he pokes around. Very specific place that hurts. So I use my own hands to work around my knee and find the one little spot that hurts to push on and show him. He pushed on it hard and my vision blurred, my stomach turned, and I fell backwards nearly fainting. His eyes went wide and he apologized. I remember he said I'd call that excruciating, and I replied so would I. Similar break the weekend before finals my freshman year of high school. Ended up having to have surgery. I was helping my sister's Girl Scout troop set up a telescope, ran back to the main campsite to grab something, and when running back out tripped over an unmarked black 550 cord guar line on a tent. I got up, walked back to the adults, and told my mom I think I broke my arm. I was immediately asked why. Do you think that? Well, my smart self decided to lift the sleeve of the oversized hoodie I was wearing to show them that was a mistake. I looked at it, and about 2 seconds later I was passed out. Thankfully someone caught me before I hit the ground and broke anything else. Similar ambulance story too. Campsite was across an open field from the fire station, but 911 couldn't figure out where we were. Once they got there and were transporting me, the ambulance got lost on some old back roads. You could see the hospital from the campsite, and we still were lost. No crazier stuff. They had me in the back immediately. Tried a couple times to reset my arm normally, then they sedated me and used this Chinese finger trap looking thing. The sedation didn't work. I woke up, ended up having surgery to put in permanent plates and screws. In the end, I have a couple of big scars on my arm, permanent metal in my body. No, I don't set off metal detectors, and I got out of taking finals that year. Edit, format and a word. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit like. If you would like to see more, feel free to subscribe.